"You're beautiful," he whispered, and the alien girl's eyes shined. Engineer Marcus Reed nervously adjusted his maintenance uniform for what felt like the 100th time. The observation deck of the mining vessel Prometheus had been hastily converted into a meeting space, its industrial gray walls softened by portable lighting arrays. Through the massive viewport, the swirling crimson clouds of the Kepler Nebula painted everything in warm, ethereal hues. He wasn't supposed to be here. Marcus fixed broken things: life support systems, gravity generators, the coffee machine in the break room when it decided to rebel. He didn't shake hands with alien dignitaries, especially not the Zephyrian delegation that had just arrived to negotiate mining rights. "Stop fidgeting," whispered his friend Jake, elbowing him gently. "You look like you're about to bolt." "I might," Marcus muttered, watching Captain Rivera and the other officers prepare for the formal introduction. "Why did they insist I be here?" "Because you designed the new extraction systems. They want to meet the genius behind the tech." The word genius made Marcus uncomfortable. He was just good at solving problems, at seeing how pieces fit together. Nothing more. A soft chime announced the Zephyrians' arrival. The airlock hissed open, and 5 figures glided in with an otherworldly grace that made Marcus forget to breathe. Zephyrians were humanoid but ethereally beautiful, with translucent skin that showed delicate patterns of light flowing beneath like living constellations. Their movements were fluid, almost dance-like, as if they existed in harmony with forces the rest of the universe had forgotten. Leading them was Commander Lirelai, and Marcus found himself staring despite every attempt at professionalism. She was tall and elegant, with silver hair that seemed to move with its own currents and eyes like captured starlight. The bioluminescent patterns under her skin pulsed in slow, hypnotic rhythms, blues and purples that spoke of deep ocean trenches and distant galaxies. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus," Captain Rivera said formally. "We're honored by your presence." Commander Lirelai inclined her head gracefully. "The honor is mutual, Captain. We look forward to understanding your innovations." The meeting began. With the usual diplomatic pleasantries, Marcus tried to pay attention, but his engineering mind kept wandering, analyzing the subtle technology woven into the Zephyrians' garments, the way their bioluminescence seemed to respond to their emotions. When Lirelai spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made him think of crystal chimes and solar winds. Then Captain Rivera gestured toward him. "Commander, I'd like you to meet Marcus Reed, our chief systems engineer. He developed the extraction processes we discussed." Marcus stepped forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lirelai turned those impossible starlight eyes on him, and his brain apparently decided this was the perfect moment to malfunction. "You look beautiful today," he said, the words tumbling out before his rational mind could stop them. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. The bioluminescent patterns under Lirelai's skin flared brilliant gold, her pupils dilated, and the other Zephyrians made sounds that the universal translator rendered as something between shock and horror. One of them whispered what sounded like a prayer, or possibly a curse. Captain Rivera's face went pale. "Reed, what did you just..." But Lirelai raised a delicate hand, her patterns now pulsing in slow, measured waves. She studied Marcus with an expression he couldn't read, her head tilted slightly as if listening to music only she could hear. "In our culture," she said softly, "such words carry weight beyond their surface meaning." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. I meant it as a compliment. I'm sorry if you have issued the Veltaran," she continued, her voice carrying a strange formality. "The heart binding, it cannot be undone." The silence that followed Lirelai's words stretched like the vacuum between stars. Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process what he'd just heard while the nebula outside painted everything in shifting shades of rose and amber. "Heart binding," he managed weakly. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," said one of the other Zephyrians, stepping forward. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed an agitated orange. "The ritual words have been spoken. The Veltaran is sacred." Captain Rivera looked like she was developing a migraine. "Commander Lirelai, surely we can resolve this diplomatically." "Engineer, Reed had no knowledge of your customs. Intent does not diminish the power of the spoken heart," Lirelai replied, though her tone held no anger. If anything, she seemed curious. Her patterns had shifted to a soft, contemplative blue-green. "Among my people, beauty is not acknowledged lightly. To call one beautiful is to see their essence, their inner light. It is the first step of The bonding ritual. Marcus felt the deck plating beneath his feet as if it might give way at any moment. Bonding ritual. As in, marriage? The closest translation, yes. Lorelai's starlight eyes never left his face. Though it runs deeper than your concept of marriage. It is a joining of souls, of destinies intertwined across the cosmos. Jake, who had been watching the exchange with growing amusement, leaned over to whisper, "Dude, you accidentally proposed to an alien." Not helping, Marcus hissed back. Lorelai stepped closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and jasmine, like the air after a storm on a planet he'd never seen. The Veltaran requires completion through 3 trials, she explained. Tests to prove the depth of connection between the souls. Trials, Marcus repeated faintly. What kind of trials? The trial of understanding where minds must touch and recognize truth. The trial of courage where one must face their deepest fears for the other's sake. And the trial of unity where two become as one in purpose and action. The patterns under her skin shifted to gold as she spoke, and Marcus found himself mesmerized by the gentle flow of light. It was like watching Aurora Borealis dance beneath moonlight. And if I fail these trials? He asked. Then the binding dissolves and you are free. Her voice carried a note he couldn't identify. But failure brings dishonor to both participants. Captain Rivera stepped forward. Commander, surely there's some way to the ritual has begun. Another Zephyrian interjected. It cannot be stopped, only completed or failed. Marcus looked around the room at the faces staring at him, some worried, some fascinated. Jake still fighting back laughter. Through the viewport, the nebula swirled in its eternal dance, and for a moment he felt very small in the vastness of space. How long do I have to decide? He asked. The trials must begin within 1 solar cycle, Lorelai said. They will take place aboard our vessel, the Stellar Wind. Marcus nodded slowly, his engineer's mind already working through the problem. He'd gotten into this mess by speaking without thinking. Maybe the solution was to think very carefully about what he said next. He looked directly at Lorelai, noting how the gold in her patterns seemed to intensify when their eyes met. Can I ask you something? She inclined her head. Do you want me to take these trials? For the first time since entering the room, her composure seemed to crack slightly. The bioluminescent patterns flickered, showing rapid shifts between colors. Marcus was beginning to recognize surprise, uncertainty, and something else. Something warmer. She began, then stopped. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I have never been chosen through the Veltaran. Among my people, it is considered the most pure form of recognition to be seen and acknowledged without pretense or political motive. So that's a yes? The gold in her patterns brightened, and for the first time, Marcus saw her smile. It transformed her entire face, making her seem less ethereal goddess and more approachable. Yes, Marcus Reed. I would be honored to share the trials with you. He took a deep breath, acutely aware that everyone in the room was watching him make a decision that would change his life forever. Then I accept, he said. Let's do this properly. The Stellar Wind was unlike any vessel Marcus had ever seen. Where human ships were angular and utilitarian, the Zephyrian craft flowed like liquid metal given form, its corridors curving in organic spirals that seemed to breathe with bioluminescent light. The walls themselves pulsed with gentle patterns that Marcus realized were some form of living technology, responding to the emotions and needs of the crew. Lorelai walked beside him through the ship's heart, her presence both calming and electric. She'd changed from her formal diplomatic robes into something more practical, a flowing garment that seemed to be cut from starlight itself, moving with her in ways that defied physics. Nervous? She asked, and Marcus noticed her patterns had shifted to a warm, encouraging gold. Terrified, he admitted, but also curious. I've spent my whole career trying to understand how things work. This is just a different kind of system. She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. That is why you may succeed where others might fail. The trial of understanding is not about knowledge, it is about seeing clearly. They entered a circular chamber at the ship's core, its walls transparent and showing the swirling cosmos beyond. In the center sat 2 chairs that looked grown rather than built, connected by filaments of what appeared to be crystallized light. The mind link, Lorelai explained. For the trial to begin, we must open our thoughts to each other completely. No barriers, no secrets. You will see me as I truly am, and I will see you. Marcus stared at the apparatus, his engineering mind cataloging the impossibility of it while his heart raced. Will it hurt? Pain is not the purpose, she said softly, but truth can be overwhelming. She moved to one of the chairs with fluid grace, settling into it as the crystalline filaments began to glow. Marcus took his place in the other chair and immediately felt a tingling sensation as the alien technology activated. Relax. Lirelai's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Let your mind open like a flower to sunlight. The connection began slowly, a gentle pressure at the edges of his consciousness, like someone softly knocking on a door. Marcus found himself thinking of his childhood, growing up in the mining colonies, always taking apart machines to see how they worked, driven by an insatiable need to understand. Then he felt her presence, warm and vast as a star's embrace. Images flowed between them, her memories of the Zephyrian homeworld, where crystal cities sang with harmonics that could heal the soul, where the very air was alive with particles that carried emotions between people. He saw her as a child already marked for leadership, learning to read the cosmic flows that guided her people's ships through the darkness between worlds. But deeper than memories, he felt her loneliness. For all her ethereal beauty and commanding presence, Lirelai was isolated by her position, by the responsibilities that kept her apart from the simple connections others took for granted. She had never expected to find understanding in a human engineer who fixed broken coffee machines. In return, she experienced his wonder, the pure joy he felt when solving a complex problem, the satisfaction of making something broken work again. She felt his fears too, the worry that he was ordinary, unremarkable, just another mechanic in a universe full of marvels. But through her perception, he saw himself differently, saw the poetry in his practical mind, the way he approached problems with creativity and compassion. The connection deepened, and Marcus found himself experiencing sensation through her alien nervous system. The bioluminescent patterns weren't just light, they were language, emotion, a constant conversation between body and soul. When she felt joy, it literally radiated from her skin. When she was curious, the patterns danced with questions. When she looked at him now, they sang with something he was afraid to name. You see, her voice whispered through the link, why the Veltaran is sacred. It is not just words, it is recognition of the light within another soul. I do see, Marcus replied, and he meant it in ways that went beyond the physical. Through the mind link, he understood that she wasn't just beautiful in appearance, she was beautiful in thought, in purpose, in the way she carried herself through the universe with grace and strength. The trial reached its crescendo as their consciousness merged completely for one perfect moment. Marcus felt what it was like to navigate by starlight, to feel the cosmic winds against his skin, to be part of something greater than himself. And Lirelai experienced the quiet satisfaction of understanding exactly how something worked, the meditative peace of hands-on labor, the deep contentment of being useful. When the connection finally faded, they sat in silence for a long moment, both breathing hard as if they'd run a great distance. The crystalline filaments dimmed, and Marcus realized his perception had changed fundamentally. He could see the emotions playing across Lirelai's skin now, could read the language of light. That had been invisible to him before. That was, he began, then stopped, lacking words adequate to the experience. Overwhelming, she finished, her patterns now a complex symphony of gold and silver that he somehow understood meant wonder mixed with deep recognition. You have passed the first trial, Marcus Reed. We have seen each other truly. He stood on unsteady legs, still processing the intimacy of what they'd shared. What happens now? Lirelai rose with her characteristic grace, but Marcus noticed her patterns held a new warmth when she looked at him. Now we rest. Tomorrow begins the trial of courage. Any hints about what that involves? Her smile was enigmatic, but her bioluminescence betrayed her affection. You will face your deepest fear, but you will not face it alone. Marcus spent the night in quarters aboard the stellar wind that were more comfortable than anything he'd ever experienced. The walls responded to his presence with soft, calming patterns of blue and green, and the bed seemed to adjust itself to his body's needs. But despite the luxury, sleep eluded him. He kept thinking about the mind link, about the intimacy of sharing consciousness with Lirelai, about how natural it had felt despite being completely alien. When morning came, or what passed for morning on a ship sailing through eternal space, Lirelai arrived to escort him to the second trial. She wore form-fitting armor that seemed to be made of the same living metal as the ship, her patterns visible through translucent sections that pulsed with determination. You look like you're dressed for war, Marcus observed, following her through corridors that had reconfigured themselves overnight. In a sense, we are, she replied. The trial of courage requires us to face our greatest fears, and fear is the oldest enemy of all. They entered a vast chamber that Marcus initially mistook for an empty space, until Lorelei activated a control surface and the room transformed. Holographic projectors created a perfect simulation of a space station's reactor core, specifically, one that was catastrophically failing. Marcus's blood ran cold as he recognized the scenario. This is based on the Titan station disaster, he said quietly. Yes, Lorelai's patterns showed sympathy and resolve. The mind link revealed your deepest fear, not death, but failure. The possibility that your expertise might not be enough, that people might die because you couldn't fix what was broken. The simulation was perfect in its horror. Alarms blared, emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red, and Marcus could almost feel the heat from the overloading reactor. In the distance, he heard the voices of people calling for help, trapped in sections that would be flooded with radiation if the containment failed. The trial requires you to save them, Lorelei said, but not alone. I will be with you, following your lead, trusting your expertise completely. Marcus stared at the chaos before them, his hands trembling slightly. This was exactly what had happened on Titan Station, a cascade failure that had killed 300 people while he was just one system away, unable to reach them in time. The guilt had eaten at him for years, the knowledge that if he'd been faster, smarter, better. I can't, he whispered. I failed before. I'll fail again. Lorelei moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his. Through their new connection, he could feel her absolute faith in him, unwavering as a star's light. You did not fail on Titan Station, she said firmly. The explosion occurred in a section you had never seen, with systems you had never worked on. No one could have saved them. But no buts. Her patterns flared with fierce protectiveness. I have seen your memories, Marcus Reed. I have felt your skill, your dedication, your refusal to give up. You have never failed when it truly mattered. She was right, he realized. Through the mind link, she had experienced his memories more clearly than he could himself, without the distortion of guilt and self-doubt. She had seen the truth he'd been unable to accept. Taking a deep breath, Marcus stepped into the simulation. The heat hit him immediately, and he could smell the ozone of overloading systems. But this time, he wasn't alone. Lorelei moved with him, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos. Talk me through it, she said, her voice calm despite the alarms. What do we do first? Marcus felt his training take over, his mind shifting into the focused state that came with emergency situations. The primary containment is failing, but the backup systems are still online. We need to reroute power through the secondary grid and manually activate the emergency coolant. They work together, Marcus's hands flying over control panels while Lorelei followed his instructions with perfect precision. She couldn't understand the technology, but she trusted him completely, and that trust was more powerful than any tool. Coolant system is responding, Marcus called out, sweat beading on his forehead. But we need to reach the manual override. On the other side of the reactor chamber, the path was treacherous, filled with debris and radiation hazards. But Lorelei moved with him step by step, her bioluminescent patterns providing light in the darkness, her unwavering confidence giving him strength. They reached the override just as the reactor began its final cascade toward critical failure. Marcus's hands moved with practiced efficiency, years of training and instinct guiding him through the complex shutdown sequence. Come on, he muttered, sweat dripping into his eyes. Come on, work with me. The reactor responded, its deadly glow fading as the emergency systems finally gained control. The alarms cut off one by one until the chamber fell silent except for the hum of cooling systems. Marcus stood there for a moment, hardly believing it was over. In the distance, he could hear voices, people calling out that they were safe, that the danger had passed. You did it, Lorelei said softly, her patterns now a brilliant gold that filled the chamber with warm light. You saved them all. We did it, Marcus corrected, turning to face her. I couldn't have done it alone. The simulation faded, returning them to the ship's chamber. Marcus felt different, lighter somehow, as if a weight he'd carried for years had finally been lifted from his shoulders. Through their connection, he could feel Lorelei's pride in him, her joy at his success. The second trial is complete, she announced formally. You have faced your greatest fear and emerged victorious. Marcus smiled, still catching his breath. What's the third trial? Lirelai's patterns shifted to something softer, more intimate. The trial of unity. We must work as one to achieve something neither could accomplish alone. And what exactly are we trying to accomplish? Her smile was radiant, her bioluminescence dancing with anticipation. We are going to save my people. The command center of the stellar wind buzzed with urgent activity as Marcus tried to process what Lirelai had just told him. Through the vast transparent dome overhead, he could see other Zephyrian ships converging on their position, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with patterns that even his newly awakened ability to read their light language couldn't fully interpret. A solar flare? Marcus repeated, staring at the holographic display showing their sun in violent eruption. From your home star? The largest in recorded history, confirmed Velthara, Lirelai's science officer, her patterns flickering with barely controlled panic. It will reach Zephyr Prime in 18 standard hours. Our atmospheric processors cannot handle radiation of this magnitude. Marcus studied the data, his engineer's mind automatically calculating trajectories and energy outputs. Evacuation? Impossible, Lirelai said, her own patterns now a steady, determined silver. 50 million people cannot be moved in less than a day, and our deep space colonies cannot support the population. So what's the plan? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew why they'd brought him here. Lirelai gestured to another holographic display, this one showing a massive space station in orbit around Zephyr Prime, the Harmony Station. It was designed as a planetary shield generator, capable of deflecting solar radiation on a massive scale, but it was never completed. Marcus studied the schematics, noting the incomplete sections and the vast spaces where critical components should have been. What stopped the construction? We could never solve the power distribution problem, Velthara admitted, her patterns dim with old frustration. The energy requirements are beyond what our technology can efficiently channel, but human engineering might approach it differently, Lirelai said, her eyes meeting Marcus's. Your people think in terms of redundancy, of brute force solutions that work even when elegant ones fail. Marcus felt the weight of 50 million lives settling on his shoulders. Through his connection with Lirelai, he could sense her absolute faith in him, her belief that together they could accomplish the impossible. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Show me everything, he said. The next 16 hours blurred together in a haze of desperate engineering. Marcus found himself working more closely with Lirelai than he'd ever worked with anyone, their minds still partially linked from the earlier trials. She translated his crude sketches into precise Zephyrian technical specifications, while he redesigned their elegant but insufficient power systems with human pragmatism. You want to do what? Velthara asked when Marcus explained his solution. Overload the fusion reactors, Marcus repeated calmly. Run them at 200% capacity for exactly 47 minutes, long enough to power the shield at full strength until the flare passes. The reactors will be destroyed, another engineer protested. Better than losing the planet, Marcus shot back. We can build new reactors. We can't build new people. Lirelai's patterns pulsed with understanding. It's brilliant, she said. Crude, dangerous, and completely insane but brilliant. They worked through the final hours as the solar storm approached, Marcus and Lirelai moving in perfect synchronization. She anticipated his needs before he voiced them, while he found himself understanding her technology on an intuitive level that went beyond mere technical knowledge. 30 minutes to impact, Velthara announced, her voice tight with stress. Shield generators online, Marcus reported from his position at the hastily modified control station, all reactors showing green across the board. Through the viewport, Marcus could see Zephyr Prime in the distance, its crystalline cities glittering like jewels against the backdrop of space. 50 million people going about their lives, trusting in the two people working frantically above their heads. 15 minutes to impact, solar radiation levels rising exponentially. Marcus felt Lirelai's hand slip into their fingers, intertwining as her bioluminescent patterns synchronized with his heartbeat. Whatever happens, she said softly, I am grateful for this chance to stand beside you. We're not done yet, Marcus replied, squeezing her hand. Shield deployment in 3, 2, 1. Now, the Harmony Station came alive around them, energy coursing through circuits that had never been designed to carry such loads. Warning alarms blared as the fusion reactors pushed past their safety limits, but the massive shield array deployed flawlessly, creating a barrier of charged particles between the planet and the approaching storm. Impact! Velthara shouted. The solar flare hit like the fist of an angry god. Marcus watched the energy readings spike beyond the scale of their instruments as the shield absorbed radiation that would have sterilized the planet's surface. The station shook violently, and sparks flew from overloaded systems throughout the command center. Reactor 3 is redlining. Someone called out. Hold it together, Marcus muttered, making minute adjustments to the power distribution. Come on, hold together. Beside him, Lirelai's entire body blazed with bioluminescence as she channeled her people's connection to stellar forces, somehow stabilizing the energy flows through pure will and ancient knowledge. The 47 minutes felt like hours, but finally, the storm began to subside. The radiation levels dropped back to normal ranges, and the planetary shield powered down as the last of the reactors failed in precisely controlled shutdowns. In the sudden quiet, Marcus and Lirelai looked at each other, then at the displays showing Zephyr Prime safe and unharmed in the distance. We did it, Marcus said quietly. We actually did it. Lirelai's patterns exploded in a symphony of gold and silver that was so bright it cast shadows on the walls. Around them, the entire crew was celebrating, but Marcus only had eyes for her. The trials are complete, she said, her voice formal but her patterns betraying deep emotion. We have proven understanding, courage, and unity. The Veltaran is fulfilled. Marcus stepped closer, still holding her hand. So what does that make us now? Bonded, she replied, her smile radiant. Heart to heart, soul to soul, for as long as the stars burn. Marcus looked out at the cosmos spinning around them, at the planet they'd just saved, at the woman whose light now danced in harmony with his own heartbeat. You know, he said, grinning, I think I'm going to like being married to you. Lirelai laughed, a sound like stellar winds singing through crystal, and her bioluminescence painted the command center in patterns of pure joy. Outside, the stars watched over two souls who had found each other across the vastness of space, bound together by accident and choice, by courage and understanding, by the simple recognition of beauty in the most unexpected places. The end.